My name is Zaina, and I'm a final year PhD candidate at the University of Exeter. As part of this workshop, I'll be discussing surrogacy reform, specifically talking about the focus on legal status present within the British regulatory framework. I'll start by defining some of the terms used in surrogacy research and then give an overview of the British legal framework. From there, I'll present on how the law has been focused on the surrogate and child's legal status. Finally, I'll discuss the Law Commission's project and provisional proposed reforms as related to this issue of legal status. Surrogacy refers to a form of assisted reproduction where an individual gestates an embryo for another, with the goal of relinquishing the baby to another person or couple, known as the intended parent or parents. Surrogacy is split into two forms: traditional surrogacy, where the surrogate's egg is artificially inseminated with the intended parent's sperm. Here, the surrogate is genetically related to the baby. Or gestational surrogacy, where an embryo is planted into the surrogate, and this embryo is created either from the intended parent's gametes or a combination of an intended parent gamete and donor gamete. We'll look at the legal landscape from 1984 to 1990 first. The Thatcher government was committed to strengthening and defending the nuclear family. This led to the establishment of the Warnock Committee, which was tasked with examining the social, ethical, and legal implications of recent and potential developments in human fertilization and embryology. Surrogacy wasn't supposed to be included within this report, and only 6 pages of the report deal with surrogacy. Their report presented moral objections to surrogacy, commodification of human life, exploitation of women, and threat to the nuclear family. The Warnock Committee focused on preventing commercial surrogacy arrangements as a result. Their recommendations would go on to form the basis of the Surrogacy Arrangements Act 1985. However, before Parliament could debate these recommendations, the Baby Cotton case forced surrogacy onto the legislative agenda. This case reified the moral panic associated with surrogacy. Broadly speaking, an American agency arranged for Kim Cotton to act as a traditional surrogate. She was paid £6,500 for her involvement, and the agency was also paid for their involvement. Following the birth of the baby, the intended parents were committed to the care of this child. Now, as I said, this case resulted in the swift passing of the 1985 Act. This act was overly focused on commercial surrogacy. It was quite limited in other respects. It didn't deal with enforceability, parenthood, or payment. It wasn't until the 1990 Human Fertilization and Embryology Act that the issues of enforceability, parenthood, and payment were dealt with, as outlined on the slides. I'll pick up on this issue of parental order shortly, but Section 36(1) inserted Section 1A. This dealt with enforceability. Section 27(1) codified the mater est presumption, so legal motherhood is demonstrated by gestation. This meant the surrogate was necessarily the legal mother. And Section 30, as I said, introduced the parental order. This dealt with payment as well as parenthood. Looking at the legal landscape from 1990 onwards, the Brazier Review was commissioned in 1998 to deal with issues arising out of payments to surrogates. They recommended repealing the 1985 Act and the parental order and replacing them with a Surrogacy Act. However, no changes to the law or policy followed. 10 years later, the Human Fertilization and Embryology Act 2008 updated the law in light of changing social norms. This extended eligibility to same-sex civil partners and opposite and same-sex couples living as partners in an enduring family relationship with no formal union. This demonstrates the law's reliance on a two-parent model and was justified given surrogacy's additional burdens and responsibilities. The 2010 regulations accompanied this 2008 Act and applied the Adoption and Children Act 2002, Section 1 to these applications, requiring the child's lifelong welfare to be the court's paramount consideration, overriding all others. The primacy of the child's best interest has all but ensured that a parental order will be granted regardless of the sum paid to the surrogate. Finally, in 2018, the remedial order allowed single parents to apply for a parental order. Let's look at the legal status then. So the British regulatory approach has focused predominantly on the surrogate and child's legal statuses. The 1985 and 1990 Acts provided the initial regulatory framework for assisted reproduction and surrogacy and the legal status of those involved in these types of novel family formation. The preoccupation with the potential familial harm underpinned legislation regulating motherhood. An insistence on having the woman to whom the child was born recognized as the legal mother grounded the surrogate's automatic establishment as the legal mother. This insistence is referred to as law's principal stumbling block by Emily Jackson. Gestation is seen as the essence of motherhood, and an explicit rebuttal of female parenthood grounded in genetics avoids the Solomonic dilemma of having two women claim motherhood on the basis of biology. By necessity, only one person can gestate. This shows us that legal motherhood is inflexible and struggles to accommodate these novel family forms. Of course, the intended parents want legal recognition of their child, and this is done through the parental order. The introduction of the parental order was a significant development as it affirmed their intention. For those pursuing parenthood through surrogacy, easier legal recognition of parenthood was provided if the resulting family resembled the traditional nuclear family. The parental order was essentially a fast-track adoption, and until 2018, it did little more than demonstrate the persistence of the traditional nuclear family. Single individuals may now apply for a parental order following Re-Z, but collaborative co-parents are excluded from eligibility for parental orders, as the government is of the view that surrogacy is best dealt with by a couple in an enduring family relationship. This underlines the idea that a family is an entity built on and arising as a project in the 13th program of law reform. The Scottish Law Commission accepted a reference from the minister to conduct the project jointly, and a joint consultation paper was published in June 2019. The full consultation period ended October 2019. Proposals are, among other things, the creation of a new pathway to legal parenthood in surrogacy, which would allow the intended parents to be the legal parents from birth, and the removal of a genetic link between the intended parents and child where necessary. This new pathway will not be mandatory. Parties will still be able to make their own surrogacy arrangements privately without needing to go through regulated surrogacy organizations. But if they do so, they lose the advantage of being legal parents of their children from birth. They'll have to use the old pathway and apply for a parental order under the current laws instead. The Commission predicts that this will motivate the vast majority of intended parents to use the new pathway. Intended parents would be recognized as legal parents from birth without the need for a parental order, but this would only be available where domestic surrogacy organizations are used. I look forward to seeing what the Law Commission proposes next year and welcome any and all questions on surrogacy. Thank you.